This isn't a score. This was the death toll. In a single season of 1905, 19 players were killed playing American football. The public was horrified. Schools had abolished it. Football was on the verge of extinction, saved by one radical idea that the game's elite absolutely hated. In 1905, American football was a blood sport, not a game of elegant passes and athletic catches, but a brutal, grinding spectacle of human battering rams. In dangerous mass formations, players locked arms and charged forward. The result wasn't just injury, it was death. This brutality had a grim and predictable result. Newspapers began tracking the casualties. On November 26, 1905, the Chicago Tribune published a shocking headline on the season's death harvest, tallying 19 player deaths and 137 serious injuries because of football. The most public and shocking incident occurred in New York City. During a game against NYU, New York University, Union College's Harold Moore was kicked in the head. He died that evening from a cerebral hemorrhage. His death was the final straw. A national outcry erupted. The public perception was clear. Football had to change or be abolished. The true catalyst for change came from New York University Chancellor Henry M. McCracken. He first called a conference of 13 colleges in December 1905 to discuss whether to reform or abolish the sport. This was followed by a second larger meeting on December 28th, where representatives from 62 institutions gathered to form the Intercollegiate Athletic Association of the United States, the organization that would eventually become the NCAA. For the first time, college sports had a national governing body tasked with reforming the game. At the heart of the debate was a radical idea: the forward pass. One of its biggest proponents was John Heisman, then the coach at Georgia Tech. Having witnessed an illegal forward pass decide a game back in 1895, Heisman had spent years lobbying for its legalization. He argued it would open up the game, forcing defenses to spread out and thus breaking up the dangerous mass formations. It would inject speed and skill into a game of pure brawn. Heisman persuaded Navy's Paul Dashiell, who was on the Rules Committee, to propose legalizing the forward pass. Opposing him was the most powerful man in football, Walter Camp of Yale, the father of American football. Camp, who dominated the existing Rules Committee, viewed the forward pass with contempt. He believed it would emasculate the sport's rugged character. It was a sissified play that had no place on the gridiron. This 1906 illustration from Judge magazine shows what skeptics thought would happen to football, depicting two fine, dainty gentlemen vendors facing off. Note that the stands are empty, the implication that the new rules would destroy interest in the game. The result of the clash between past supporters and skeptics was a compromise, but one heavily tilted in the skeptics' favor. The committee legalized the forward pass and then immediately sabotaged it with a set of rules so insane that you'd think they'd wanted it to fail. Imagine this: your quarterback throws a pass and it falls incomplete. That's not just a loss of down, it's an immediate turnover. The other team gets the ball. But wait, it gets worse. If that happened on first down, you also get a 15-yard penalty. It was a play that punished you twice for one mistake. They added even more poison pills. You couldn't throw to the middle of the field. You couldn't throw it across the goal line for a touchdown. You couldn't even throw it out of bounds. Almost any mistake meant handing the ball right back to the defense. These weren't rules, they were a straitjacket. They're certainly not rules conducive to making the forward pass a consistent offensive weapon. Still, there were those who used it despite the risks. Let me know in the comments which of those insane 1906 rules you think was the absolute worst. While the powerful Eastern schools ignored the new rule, the outsiders embraced it. The first was Eddie Kokums, the coach of St. Louis University. Recognizing its revolutionary potential, Kokums took his team to a secluded Jesuit retreat in Wisconsin for 2 months of intensive secret practice. He developed an entirely new system he called the overhead projectile spiral pass. Note that most teams, when trying early forward passes, threw the football the same as you'd throw a chest pass in basketball: two hands and push. The first legal forward pass, as widely recognized in history, was thrown on September 5th, 1906, in a game against Carroll College. The quarterback was Bradbury Robinson. Robinson's first attempt fell incomplete, resulting in an immediate turnover to Carroll College, but Cocombs was undeterred. Later in the game, Robinson dropped back again and fired a pass to his end, Jack Snyder, for a 20-yard touchdown. The aerial age had officially, if quietly, begun. The results of Cocombs' experiments were spectacular. St. Louis University went 11-0 in 1906, outscoring their opponents by a staggering margin of 407-11. Robinson, with his ability to throw the fat rugby-style ball over 40 yards with a spiral, became football's first true triple threat. Still, their success was dismissed by the Eastern establishment as a fluke achieved against inferior Midwestern competition. The next great innovator was Pop Warner at the Carlisle Indian Industrial School. Warner coached a team of Native American students who were almost always outsized. He realized the pass was the ultimate equalizer. Speed and deception could overcome brute force. In 1907, or around there, he created the Carlisle formation, a precursor to the single wing, designed to disguise whether a play would be a run, a kick, or a pass. With the legendary Jim Thorpe at his disposal, Warner created impossible dilemmas for traditional defenses. On October 26, 1907, Carlisle faced the mighty University of Pennsylvania. The Indians unleashed a shocking aerial assault, completing 18 of 16 passes and routing Penn 26-6, outgaining them 402 yards to just 76. One 40-yard spiral from quarterback Pete Hauser was described by a reporter as the sporting equivalent of the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk. Interesting that Warner was an early adopter, but years later in 1927 would call the forward pass the bastard offspring of real football. Despite the stunning successes of St. Louis and Carlisle, the forward pass remained a fringe concept for several years. The punitive rules made it too risky for most coaches, and the game remained a brutal, lethal affair. Between 1908 and 1909, another 31 football-related deaths were reported, leading to further calls for reform and abolishment. This pressure finally led to a series of crucial rules changes that unlocked the full potential of the aerial game. In 1910, the Rules Committee eliminated the most punishing restriction. An untouched incomplete pass was no longer a turnover. It was now just a loss of down, dramatically reducing the risk of throwing the ball. Then, in 1912, another package of revolutionary changes was adopted. Teams were now given 4 downs to gain 10 yards, making an incompletion on an early down far less costly. Most importantly, a pass completed in the end zone was now ruled a touchdown, and the value of a touchdown was increased to 6 points. Unfortunately, an incomplete pass in the end zone resulted in a touchback. But hey, baby steps. The stage was now set for the forward pass to go mainstream, and the moment arrived in a 1913 game that would become legendary. On November 1st, 1913, a little-known Midwestern school called Notre Dame traveled to West Point to face the powerhouse Army squad. Notre Dame quarterback Gus Duray and his favorite receiver, some guy an end named Newt Rockne, put on a passing clinic. They unleashed a systematic passing attack, the likes of which the Eastern football establishment had never seen. Duray completed 14 of 17 passes for 243 yards, connecting with Rockne and others on long, graceful strikes. As Rockne later wrote, the crowd was astonished. There had been no hurdling, no tackling, no plunging, just a long-distance touchdown by rapid transit. The aerial attack forced Army's defense to spread out, which in turn opened up Notre Dame's running game. The Irish won in a stunning 35-13 upset. By now, many teams were using the pass, but this was the game that finally convinced the establishment the pass was no gimmick. It might be considered the most important game in the history of football. I have a full video on that game you might like. This aerial revolution was also made possible by a crucial technological development: the evolution of the football itself. Early footballs were fat watermelon-shaped orbs that were difficult to grip and nearly impossible to throw. The ball was gradually redesigned into a slimmer, more tapered prolate spheroid, as it was referred to, and passing became more integral to the game. This modern shape was far easier to grip and throw, enabling the tight spirals that are now synonymous with the sport. If you're enjoying these deep dives that uncover the hardcore history of football, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. We have a lot more stories like this to tell. For 2 decades, the Eastern establishment waged a cultural war against the past. Their resistance wasn't just about tradition, it was about power. The big three, Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, Penn, if you want to add a fourth, had built their dynasties on large, powerful players who could win in the trenches. But while the old guard was resisting, a prophet was emerging in Texas. At Texas Christian University, a fiery and imaginative coach named Leo Dutch Meyer was quietly building the future. Long before it was popular, Meyer made the forward pass the foundation of his offense. He created the Meyer spread, splitting his receivers wide and using a shotgun snap to give his quarterback time. His philosophy was simple: use short, high-percentage passes to control the ball and set up the run. He told his legendary quarterback, slinging Sammy Baugh, "Look at what the short pass can do for you. That way you could beat a better team." With Baugh and later Heisman winner Davey O'Brien, Meyer's TCU Horned Frogs won 2 national championships in the 1930s, proving that a pass-first philosophy wasn't just a novelty, it was a recipe for dominance. Meyer was so far ahead of his time, he wrote the book on the subject titled Spread Formation Football in 1952. For the rest of college football to catch up with Meyer, the rules needed to evolve. In 1934, the football itself was modified, becoming slimmer and more aerodynamic, making it even easier to grip and throw with a spiral. Another rules change occurred in 1934. Football finally allowed 1 incomplete pass in the end zone per possession. 1. And if you threw a second incompletion in the end zone, touchback. It took until 1938 for the rule to change so that only 4th down incompletions in the end zone resulted in touchbacks. After World War II, unlimited substitution allowed for specialists, players who were recruited and trained specifically to pass and catch. The 15-yard penalty for roughing the passer was added, giving new protection to the quarterback. Another massive change in 1945, a rule that required the passer to be 5 yards behind the neutral zone was removed. This rule had existed since 1906, and it wasn't until 1945 that quarterbacks were able to use the entire field. The final floodgate opened in the 1970s. As defenses became more physical, a philosophical shift occurred. Crucially, in 1978, the NFL adopted a rule that restricted defenders from making significant contact with the receivers more than 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. The Mel Blount rule effectively ended the era of defensive backs mugging receivers all over the field. It permanently shifted the balance of power to the offense and paved the way for the modern Air Force of the NFL, and it had its effects in college football. Also, during what I'm calling the pass protection wars in the late 1970s through the 80s, rules committees introduced changes to promote the passing game. These included allowing the retreat block, full arm extension for offensive linemen and pass protection, and reducing penalties on offensive linemen for illegal use of hands. These rules changes eliminated the chicken wing, or the flipper blocking, and allowed linemen to use their hands to grab inside, and greatly increases the line's ability to protect the quarterback. If you can imagine blocking like this and having to keep your stance and keep in front of a guy that's rushing with the ball, you can see how hard that is compared to doing this and grabbing somebody and keeping your leverage while moving your body. This era saw passing yardage begin to exceed rushing yardage for the first time. The popularization of the pass set off a chain reaction of innovation, with generations of coaching gurus building on the work of their predecessors to create the complex passing games we see today. Benny Owen, the one-armed coach at Oklahoma, was central to the early development of the forward pass. The Sooners became practitioners of all-out aerial attacks. Coach Owen, averaging 30 to 35 forward passes a game, unheard of at the time, accumulated more passing yardage than rushing in most games. He was the founding father of the forward pass tradition in the Southwest. At TCU, Dutch Meyer spread the field wide when nobody else dared. In the 1960s, the AFL's Sid Gilman turned the long bomb into an art form. Then came the masters of the modern era. Lavelle Edwards at BYU, Bill Walsh with his West Coast offense turning short passes into a death by 1,000 cuts. It all culminated in the mad scientists. Mouse Davis, Hal Mumme, and Mike Leach with their air raid offenses, a philosophy so simple and radical it changed the sport forever. We're going to throw the ball. Try and stop us. The increasing prominence of the forward pass fundamentally changed the strategic landscape of American football in profound ways. Transformation from a blood sport. The forward pass moved the game away from its brutal mass formation origins, emphasizing skill and athleticism over brute force. It transformed the game from warlike combat into a more open and dynamic contest. Emphasis on speed and deception. The new football put a higher premium on speed and deception. This required a drastic remodel of defenses, leading to the development of new defensive systems and strategies designed to counter the spread out offenses. Full use of the field. Offenses began to utilize the entire width and depth of the field, stretching defenses horizontally and vertically, which was a significant departure from the traditional straight ahead game. This evolution influenced player development, coaching philosophies, and fan engagement. Player development. There was a shift in the ideal player physique and skill set. The game began to demand more athletic ability rather than just size and strength. This attracted new types of players, such as former basketball players and track athletes. Players had to develop precise passing, route running, and defensive reading skills. The emphasis on passing also encouraged players to practice their skills extensively outside of formal team practices. Coaching philosophies. Coaches had to abandon conservative run-heavy strategies like 3 yards and a cloud of dust for more innovative and pass-oriented schemes. This led to development of complex offensive systems like the T formation, the West Coast offense, the run and shoot, and the air raid. The long-held tradition that the run sets up the pass was challenged, with some coaches fully committing to the passing game on every down. And probably most relevant to you and I, fan engagement. The forward pass was a breathtaking innovation that captivated audiences. Around 1940, George Halas of the Bears knew the game was boring and something had to change. Enter the T formation and the birth of modern NFL offenses. Halas recognized that the single wing and double wing offenses were boring spectators. During the 1932 NFL season, neither Chicago Bears nor their opponents scored a single touchdown through 4 games. Halas changed to the T formation and in the 1940 NFL Championship beat the Washington Redskins 73-0. Suddenly, people weren't bored anymore. The forward pass led to soaring attendance figures and transformed the game into an aerial circus. The increased scoring and dramatic plays contributed significantly to the sport's growing popularity, and earlier on, the 1913 Notre Dame-Army game served as a major public relations event for the forward pass. The statistical evidence of this revolution is staggering. The average passer rating in college football exploded from 27.2 in 1932 to over 85 by the 2010s. The 3,000-yard passer first appeared in the 1960s, but after the 1970s rule changes, it became the benchmark for a great season. The forward pass transformed college football into even more of a national obsession. The visual spectacle of the long bomb and the diving catch was perfect for television, turning games into must-see events and fueling the growth of massive media rights deals. It made the quarterback the unquestioned star of the college game, a campus hero, and a Heisman quarterback. The pass created the modern game we recognize today, with its emphasis on strategy over brute force, specialization over generic athleticism, and spectacular plays over grinding warfare. What began as a desperate measure to reduce fatalities in 1905 not only achieved its original safety objective, but it also accidentally unlocked the strategic, commercial, and artistic potential of the game. It saved football from itself, and in the process, created the beloved institution of college football. I want to know who you think the greatest offensive innovator in football history is. Was it one of the old school pioneers or a modern guru like Mike Leach? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, you might like our playlist featuring other offenses throughout football history. The playlist contains videos such as the single wing, the T formation, the short punt formation, one you've probably never heard of, the wishbone, and the first triple option offense, the veer. This is John Johnston with Hardcore College Football History. Thank you for watching.